Paraves are a widespread group of theropod dinosaurs that originated in the Middle Jurassic period. In addition to the extinct dromaeosaurids, Troodontids and Scansoriopterygidae, the group also contains the aviolans, which include diverse extinct taxa as well as the over 10,000 species of living birds. Basal members of Paraves are well known for the possession of an enlarged claw on the second digit of the foot, which was held off the ground when walking in some species. Invertebrates is one of the largest known Paravians, with an estimated height of 2 meters, making it of comparable size to the gigantic dromaeosaurs such as Utahraptor. Because its fossils lack the characteristic sickle claw of dromaeosaurs on the second digit, Invertebrates is provisionally classified as a basal Paravian of uncertain affinities. It is known solely from the Cape Lamb member of the Snow Hill Island Formation in James Ross Island, an island on the northeastern edge of the Antarctic Peninsula. The floral composition, habitat and climate are of one similar to modern volcanic arches. During the time in which Invertebrates lived, Earth's climate was much warmer and more humid than it is today, and as a result Antarctica was without ice. The animals inhabiting Antarctica at this time would still have had to endure long periods of darkness during the winter, much like in modern-day Antarctica. Rahanavis, often depicted in flight, may not have been capable of flying, and there is some debate over whether its forelimb bones, including quill knobs, belong to the same skeleton as the rest of the body. Some researchers suggest that it could be a chimera, combining bird forelimbs with a dromaeosaurid skeleton, leading to its classification as a nomen dubium. The discovery of the primitive bird Verona nearby raises the possibility of confusion, but many scientists argue that Rahanavis is a single animal due to the close proximity of its bones. Louis Chappe supports this, noting that all bones were found in a small area. He also believes Rahanavis could fly, citing its robust ulna and quill knobs, which suggest powerful wings. Its shoulder structure shows adaptations for flapping flight, though it was likely clumsier than modern birds. Comparisons to Microraptor suggest a bat-like flight stroke may have been used. It was a small predator, at about 70 centimeters long and 2 kilograms, with the typical dromaeosaurid-like raised sickle claw on the second toe. Scansoriopteryx is notable for its wide, rounded jaws with at least 12 teeth, larger at the front, and possibly fused lower jaw bones, similar to Oviraptorosaurs. Its elongated third finger is also distinctive, nearly twice as long as the second, and may have supported a membranous wing, as seen in its relative. The hip socket was non-perforated, with a forward-pointing pubis, a primitive theropod feature. Its legs were short with scaly feet, and long tail feathers suggest it may have had hind wings like Microraptor. Scansoriopteryx had a reversed first toe for tree climbing and likely lived an arboreal lifestyle. Its long forelimbs, even in juveniles, played a crucial role in movement, indicating adaptations for climbing. Feather impressions suggest that while it couldn't achieve powered flight, it may have used its wings for gliding or maneuvering through trees. Its climbing adaptations are similar to those of modern tree-dwelling species, supporting a primarily arboreal existence. Epidexipteryx is known from a well-preserved partial skeleton that includes 4 long feathers on the tail, composed of a central rachis and veins. However, unlike in modern-style rectrices, the veins were not branched into individual filaments but made up of a single ribbon-like sheet. It also preserved a covering of simpler body feathers, composed of parallel barbs as in more primitive feathered dinosaurs. However, the body feathers of Epidexipteryx are unique in that some appear to arise from a membranous structure at the base of each feather. It has been suggested that this may represent a stage in the evolution of the feather. In all, the skeleton measures 40 centimeters in length including the incomplete tail feathers, and the authors estimated a weight of 160 grams, smaller than most other basal aviolans. It appears to have lacked remiges, wing feathers. It may have possessed some sort of membrane wing to allow gliding. It was the first non-avian dinosaur found that had clear adaptations to an arboreal or semi-arboreal lifestyle. It is likely that they spent much of their time in trees. Given its elaborate plumage, a lot of the early analyses of its phylogenetic position put it closer to birds. However, it has since been placed as a basal paravian in a recent 2012 study. There is a chance, however, that they are actually Penaraptorans, a sister group to the Oviraptors. More fossils once again are required to know more about where this animal falls in the dinosaurian tree. Ambopteryx had a short, blunt head and an elongated third finger. Initially, it was thought that Scansoriopterygids used this finger to extract grubs, like the modern eye. However, Wang believe its main function was to support a wing membrane, or patagium, as the fingers had limited mobility. Ambopteryx was closely related to E, both featuring a styloform element, an elongated bone extending from the ulna to support the wing membrane, stretching from the third finger to the abdomen. Its forelimbs were 1.3 times longer than its hind limbs, with a robust ulna and a short tail ending in a pygostyle, a structure only found in a few other non-avian theropods. Its abdominal area contained gastroliths and fragments of bone, suggesting an omnivorous diet. This discovery sheds light on the previously unknown diet of Scansoriopterygids, hinting they consumed a mix of plants and small animals. E was a small, protobird weighing about 280 grams with a wingspan of 60 centimeters. It had a short, blunt skull, forward-angled teeth and a squat body with a very short tail. Its long, slender forelimbs had extended fingers, while the hind limbs were shorter. Its most distinctive feature was its integument, covered in long, stiff quill-like feathers and a bat-like membrane between its fingers, supported by a styloform bone. Its body was densely feathered, with some color preserved, mostly black with yellow-brown patches on the head. Its diet was likely insectivorous, possibly omnivorous. Whether it could fly is uncertain, as its wing structure is unlike any other dinosaur. Models suggest that it was probably incapable of powered flight, though it may have been able to glide. Its center of mass would have made it unstable in the air, but flapping might have aided in movement. It likely spent much of its time climbing trees, using its unique wings possibly for display or maneuvering. Archaeopteryx is a genus of bird-like dinosaurs often referred to as the primeval bird. It lived during the late Jurassic, in what is now southern Germany. It is similar in size to a Eurasian magpie, with the largest species growing up to 50 centimeters in length. Despite having broad wings and inferred flying or gliding abilities, it shared many features with small Mesozoic dinosaurs, such as sharp teeth, clawed fingers, and a long bony tail. Its unique combination of bird and dinosaur traits makes it a crucial transitional fossil between non-avian dinosaurs and birds. Archaeopteryx was first named in 1861 from a single feather, though its identity has been debated. Later that year, the first complete skeleton was found, and over time, 12 fossils have been discovered, most showing feather impressions. The advanced flight feathers on these fossils suggest feather evolution began before the late Jurassic. Archaeopteryx played a key role in supporting Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, as it provided early evidence of transitional species. Although it was once considered the earliest bird, recent discoveries of other feathered dinosaurs have complicated its place in the evolutionary tree, raising questions about the true ancestors of modern birds. It had asymmetrical flight feathers, suggesting it was capable of some form of flight, possibly gliding rather than flapping due to its weak flight muscles. The structure of its wings and tail, along with the absence of a bony breastbone, supports the idea of limited powered flight, with some studies indicating a downstroke-only flapping motion. Recent studies reveal that its flight abilities may have been weak, and it might have used its wings more for gliding or predator evasion. Pedipena had primitive feet resembling those of Troodontids and dromaeosaurids but lacked the highly specialized sickle-like claws of its relatives. Its second toe was enlarged but not as developed as in other Deinonychosaurs. Found in the mid to late Jurassic Dahugu fossil beds, Pedipena supports the theory that birds originated in Asia. It also had long, symmetrical feathers on its metatarsus, unlike the asymmetrical feathers typical of flying animals. These hind wings were smaller and rounder than those of Microraptor, suggesting they had limited aerodynamic function. The presence of these feathers hints at an early stage in feather evolution, possibly for display or insulation rather than flight. Some propose that Pedipena represents an intermediate stage where hind wings were being reduced. Eosinopteryx, which was originally classified as a troodontid, then got reclassified as an Archaeopterygid, making it closer to birds. If it was not an avialine, it could have been a primitive Paravian as well. It is only known from one fossil specimen, so the confusion on its classification is fairly standard. It lived in the late Jurassic, about 160 million years ago. It was about 30 centimeters long, making it quite small if it wasn't an avialan. The tail was fairly short and the wings were the same size as Anchiornis, and it had hind wings on its lower legs and feet. This could mean that the origin of flight is a much more complex phenomenon than Archaeopteryx to birds, however, given various dinosaurs such as Microraptor. The skeletal morphology of Sericornes suggests a terrestrial ecology without flying adaptations. The tail is covered proximally by filaments and distally by fine rectrices. Symmetrical, barbule-free remiges are attached along the forelimbs and elongated feathers of the hind limbs extend to the toes, suggesting that the remiges of the hind legs had evolved in the Maniraptorans residing on the ground before being co-opted to an arboreal lifestyle and possibly, gliding. Sericornes is further distinguished by having very large anterior most maxillary teeth, about twice as long as the others. Since the skeleton compressed on a plane, Lefebvre and colleagues have used a new microscan technique called luminography to identify the pneumatic cavity in the vertebrae. The cervical vertebrae have a small pneumatic cavity, which is a derived condition shared by many other coelurosaurian theropods. Anchiornis had an extensive covering of feathers, including wing-like structures on both its arms and legs, which is why it's often called a four-winged dinosaur. It is one of the first dinosaurs for which scientists have determined feather coloration. Using pigment-containing structures called melanosomes, researchers deduced that it had a mostly black body with white feathers on its wings and a striking reddish-brown crest on its head. Its feathers were symmetrical, unlike the asymmetrical feathers of modern birds, which are crucial for powered flight. This suggests that Anchiornis may have been capable of gliding or limited flight, but not sustained flapping flight like modern birds. It belongs to the group Paraves, which includes both early birds and their closest dinosaur relatives. Its anatomy closely resembles that of modern birds, especially in its wings and legs, providing evidence of the gradual transition from dinosaurs to birds. Its discovery helped clarify the evolutionary sequence of flight in birds. Its feather arrangement and anatomy suggest it was not fully capable of modern flight but was likely evolving towards improved aerial capabilities. Anchiornis had a specialized wrist structure, with semilunate carpal bones that are crucial for wing movement. This structure is shared with modern birds and highlights how the skeletal adaptations for flight developed. Some scientists suggest that it may have lived in trees, using its wings to glide from branch to branch or as a stabilizer while climbing, shedding light on the trees-down hypothesis of flight evolution. A good majority of the known Anchiornithid fossils have been recovered from the Taojian Formation in Liaoning, China, dating back to 160 million years. The climate during this period of time would have been subtropical to temperate, warm and humid based on the plant life present in the Taojian Formation. This environment was dominated plant by gymnosperm trees. Although Orornis is practically certain that every Anchiornithid possessed advanced pennaceous feathers, there is still much variety in feathering between genera. Most had veined tail feathers forming a frond-shaped tail, with the tail's feathers of Kaihong being particularly long and in some cases asymmetrical. Kaihong's fossil is surrounded by a dense layer of feathers, with only the snout and claws exposed. The feathers are remarkably preserved, showing complex layering, though their original arrangement may have been altered over time. Kaihong's contour feathers were longer than those of other non-avian dinosaurs, with stiff and wavy types on the skull and neck. On the breast and limbs, longer feathers with thick barbs were present. The fossilized feathers contain melanosomes, organelles responsible for coloration, similar to those that create black iridescence in modern birds. Some melanosomes resembled those found in hummingbirds, suggesting Kaihong may have had brightly colored iridescent feathers. Kaihong provides the oldest known evidence of these platelet-like melanosomes, highlighting its significance in understanding the evolution of color in dinosaurs. Zyatyngia was morphologically similar to other anchiornithids. It was about 60 centimeters long and weighed an estimated 800 grams. It was a small feathered dinosaur that lived in an arboreal environment. Like Archaeopteryx, it had long forelimbs. Its femur was longer than its humerus, which might indicate that it stood on its hind limbs and could flap its forelimbs to achieve flight. It had feathers on its head, body, forelimbs and hind limbs. It also had long pennaceous feathers on its tibia and metatarsus. If Zyatyngia could fly short distances, it might also have used its hind limbs as wings. It had a dentary tooth count probably less than 10 and teeth similar in morphology to those of basal avians. Troodontids were small, bird-like theropod dinosaurs known for their slender build, sickle-shaped claws on their second toes, and relatively large brains with good depth perception. Some species had owl-like asymmetrical ears, suggesting they might have been nocturnal hunters relying on sound to locate prey. The genus Troodon, first named from a single serrated tooth discovered in the 1850s, was initially misclassified but later identified as a dinosaur and linked to other small theropods. By the late 80s, Troodon was merged with other troodontid genera, leading to it being used as a catch-all term for late Cretaceous troodontid specimens from North America. This lumping together created issues as these specimens came from different regions and time periods, making it unlikely they represented a single species. The problem was compounded by the similarity in troodontid teeth, which are difficult to distinguish from one another due to their uniform appearance. Synovenator was roughly the size of a chicken, with an estimated weight of 2.5 kilograms for a 1-meter-long individual, though larger specimens have been found. It was one of the larger troodontids in the Ischian Formation where it was discovered. Key features include a straight, vertically oriented front edge of the antorbital fenestra, a vertical ridge on the frontal bone, and a T-shaped cross-section of the surangular in the lower jaw. Its shin bone displays vertical ridges, and the premaxillary teeth lack denticles while those on the maxillary teeth are small. The jugulus branch towards the postorbital is long and slender, and the foramen magnum is notably larger than the occipital condyle. Additional characteristics include 5 sacrals, a relatively small ilium, and a bird-like ischium. The shin bone has a wide top with a rectangular lower joint surface, and the metatarsals are variably developed, with the second being small and the fourth less prominent. May lived in the Cretaceous period. At this time, the Liaoning area was dominated by numerous volcanoes in a landscape that was covered in coniferous forest, with an understory of ferns and other plants like large horsetails. Some of the earliest flowering plants were also found here. Rivers and streams coming down from the flanks of the volcanoes fed into lakes in the valleys. There were many species of small bird-like theropod dinosaurs living in the area, although most of them were slightly larger than May. Often, volcanoes erupted, entombing animals in ash and suffocating others with carbon monoxide, which accounts for the high level of preservation of fossils. May probably fed on small lizards and insects on the forest floor. It probably climbed trees as well to shelter from larger predators, and was probably not omnivorous. Judging by the length of the legs, it was a fast runner. When the first fossil of May was discovered, scientists were charmed to see the fossil in a bird-like sleeping posture. The animal had probably died from carbon monoxide poisoning, then became entombed in ash. Sinornithoids was another troodontid from Asia. Specifically, it was found in the Ejinhoro Formation of Inner Mongolia, in China, making it a little older than our typical troodontids. It would have been about 1 meter long and less than a meter high, and it was one of the most completely known troodontids in 1994, which wasn't saying much, as troodontids are typically known only from teeth. It had a long and pointed skull, however it was short compared to the rest of the body. There are 4 premaxillary and about 23 maxillary teeth. The maxillary teeth have no serrations on their front edge, the denticles on the concavely curved rear edge are small. The maxillary teeth are rather recurved. The lacrimal bone lacks a pneumatic channel. In the brain case the subotic recess is large. Gynphangopteryx is known from one specimen, a nearly complete articulated skeleton, which measured 55 centimeters long. It was preserved with extensive impressions of pennaceous feathers, but it lacks flight feathers on its hind legs, which are present in related dinosaurs such as Pedipena. It also preserves several small, oval structures that are reddish-yellow in color, possibly seeds that the dinosaur had eaten before it died. They may also be small eggs or developing follicles. If the oval structures are indeed seeds, they could indicate that Gynphangopteryx was an omnivore. It preserves feather impressions around the neck, the body, the hips, the upper hind limbs, the tail and near the manus, end of the front limbs. A 2020 study on Paravian flight capacities demonstrates that Gynphangopteryx matches closely with other flying non-avian theropods like Microraptor and Rahanavis. Latinovenatrix was the largest known troodontid, with a maximum total body length estimated to 3.5 meters as a derived troodontid. It was probably a semi-omnivorous biped with loss of the skills of a primitive flyer. A parietal bone catalogued in a specimen bears a pathological aperture. In 1985, Phil Curry hypothesized that this aperture was caused by a cyst. Tank and Rothschild interpreted it as a possible bite wound in 1999. One hatchling specimen may have suffered from a congenital defect, which resulted in the front part of its jaw being twisted. Latinovenatrix was found to be a derived troodontid, part of the newly defined Troodontidae, probably related to coeval Asian forms such as Philovenator. While Pectinodon is only known from teeth, its larger family Troodontidae is known from much more complete specimens. They were small, bird-like feathered bipedal maniraptorans with proportionally large eyes and brains. Its eponymous teeth are generally small labiolingually compressed, exhibit basal constriction, and possess large, triangular, apically oriented denticles on the distal edge. Despite having only teeth to infer behavior for Pectinodon, they are very informative fossils. Several studies have been done on troodontid teeth, shedding light on their behavior and ecology. Their tooth morphology suggests they preferred soft prey items like invertebrates, small vertebrates, or carrion. Their dentition was not as well suited for high-stress feeding as in their cousins the dromaeosaurids and tyrannosaurids. Tooth morphology also led some researchers to speculate that troodontids were omnivorous. This hypothesis was reaffirmed in a study that used stable isotopes in tooth enamel to reconstruct paleoecologies. Stenonychosaurus was a small dinosaur measuring up to 2.5 meters in length and weighing around 35 kilograms, comparable in size to Deinonychus. It had long, slender hind limbs adapted for quick running, and large, retractable sickle-shaped claws on its second toes, which were elevated while running. Its large, forward-facing eyes suggest a degree of depth perception and possibly a nocturnal lifestyle. It had a notably large brain relative to its body size, with a cerebrum-to-brain volume ratio approaching that of modern birds. It also featured bony cristae supporting its tympanic membranes and an enlarged metotic strut, similar to those seen in Dromaeosaurus and early birds like Archaeopteryx. Though Stenonychosaurus is thought to have been a predator due to its sickle claws and binocular vision, its teeth are distinct from other theropods. They suggest it might have been an omnivore, with serrated teeth similar to those of iguanas, which are adapted to a plant-eating diet. Growth ring studies indicate that it reached full size in 3 to 5 years. A partial skeleton with puncture marks, possibly from a predator, has also been found. It was becoming increasingly dubious whether Troodon was even a valid name at all, and during 2010 several paleontologists began trying to sort the mess out. As of 2022, Troodon itself is now in a sort of taxonomic limbo, with some paleontologists abandoning it as a dubious name while others are still arguing in favor of continuing to use it. The name could potentially be properly rescued if the original tooth can be clearly linked to better fossil material, letting Troodon take over priority again from one of the other better established Troodontids, or by defining a new type species similar to what happened with Iguanodon. One study was based on multiple Troodon teeth that have been collected from late Cretaceous deposits in northern Alaska. These teeth are much larger than those collected from more southern sites, providing evidence that northern Alaskan populations of Troodon grew to larger average body size, hinting at Bergmann's rule. This study also provides an analysis of the proportions and wear patterns of a large sample of Troodon teeth. It proposes that the wear patterns of all Troodon teeth suggest a diet of soft foods, inconsistent with bone-chewing, invertebrate exoskeletons, or tough plant items. This study hypothesizes a diet primarily consisting of meat.